Welcome to the Growth Lab. This is the podcast dedicated to the business of beauty and vitality. Today, we are sitting down with Staci Blume, which is the founder of Well Infused, which is a med spa franchise in Noblesville, Indiana, and Naples, Florida. Absolutely incredible. Let's find out more. This episode is brought to you by Med Spa Accelerator. We help med spas and aesthetic clinics solve the bottleneck of inconsistent unqualified patient leads to achieve a predictable, scalable monthly revenue without staff burnout. Thrilled to have Staci join us to discuss the future of aesthetics and these unique treatments. Let's get started. Good morning, Staci.
Hey, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm
Of course.
very excited to dive into your story. I like to frame these conversations simply past, present, and future. We're going to
Sure.
start with your origin story, how you got into this demanding and rewarding industry. And then we're going to
Mhm.
pivot to the present reality of what's working, what's
Sure.
causing friction, and what's keeping those doors open.
That
And then
sounds great.
finally, I want to look at the future outlook of what your vision is for the next 3 to 5 years for the entire franchise and the biggest strategic moves that you're planning. That way, we're going to cover full spectrum of building a successful clinic and how you've become so successful. Does
Oh,
that sound like
thank
a good
you.
roadmap?
That sounds like a good roadmap. Absolutely.
Awesome. Fantastic. Well, you founded Well Infused about 4 years ago, expanding a chiropractic clinic into a functional medicine franchise. That's quite a feat. Why don't you tell us how you did it?
Yeah. Looking back, sometimes I wonder myself, quite honestly, because it is not such a small thing to accomplish. I've been a chiropractor for 20 years, so I actually bought a practice the day I graduated, so not new to business as well as healthcare.
Okay.
Ended up quadrupling and then eventually selling that practice, started a brand new practice with my husband. That's been almost 9 years ago now. And about 4 years ago, when you mentioned founding Well Infused franchise, we were just trying to expand upon the services that we were already offering. As a chiropractor, our philosophy toward health is incredibly important to me, regardless if I'm actually offering chiropractic care or something complementary. But during 2020, 2021, we were really looking for complementary services that we couldn't personally offer, but that we knew if we put together the right team, we could. Instead of just adding services to our chiropractic office with those providers like nurse practitioners, RNs, we ended up creating a separate business entity, Well Infused. And really, what we were looking for at that time, myself personally, I was looking for bioidentical hormone therapy, and in my area, could not find anyone doing it the way I really wanted it done. My husband and I were going to another location for IV therapy, and we were really wanting to expand upon the functional medicine services we'd already been offering within our scope in chiropractic. And so
Mm,
when we realized that these things were something not only that we wanted, but that there was a demand for based on surveying our current clients, we set out
mm,
looking for the right providers because we can put in all the right services, but if you don't have the right people to execute those services, you're still without a good business model. Found
okay.
those right key people and put them in place. And it took about 12 months as far as a build out and developing what services we wanted, the proper trainings for all employees, but opened the first Well Infused location, not as a franchise. We hadn't even thought that far ahead,
Okay.
but in Noblesville, Indiana, so next door to my chiropractic office. Within
Okay.
12 months, it was really easy to see that that was going very well, and we had enough experience from a business standpoint that we knew how to duplicate that. So opened clinic number 2 in a location with our co-founders and co-owners for the franchise and for the Naples location just a year after that. That has been also going really well. And with our business experience and our co-founders experience in franchising in healthcare, decided that this was a replicatable model on a bigger scale than just what we would be
Mhm.
managing. So that's when we set forth to put together franchise disclosure documents. And actually, we opened our third location, our first franchisee owned location in September this year. And we'll have another opening here within probably the next 90 days.
Wow, that's amazing. Okay, cool. Thank you so much for sharing that with me. Now, tell us a little bit more about this salt room therapy. I've been
Oh,
hearing about this. I've never heard that from anywhere else before.
Yeah, you'll find now that you're aware of it, you'll see it in different places, but we're looking for options for people for respiratory health in 2020 and 2021 for obvious reasons, and we had this very narrow, oddly shaped room that wasn't really gonna be conducive for very much just based on its shape and how narrow it was, and we thought, "You know what?
Okay.
Why don't we put in a salt room?" And I, not knowing, thought the benefit of the salt room was just, okay, you walk into this space, you see salt on the walls, maybe it has a therapeutic benefit, but it's great for relaxation. But turns out the real benefit of halotherapy or salt therapy is when the salt is moving through the air. So it goes through a special generator that puts the salt particles into the air, and then you
Hmm.
actually breathe that in. Really good for respiratory health, great for inflammation, great for relaxation, all sorts of things. So, kind of the hallmark of all of our Well Infused locations is they have this salt room, but we also do all of our vitamin IV therapy in that room. So it's kind of like a double benefit. Not only do they not feel like
Oh.
they're in a clinical setting being treated for something's wrong, but they're in this really relaxing setting that on its own has its own benefits.
Oh, that's awesome. I wanna know a little bit more about some what makes a Well Infused so unique. Tell me about this key differentiator that I've
Mhm.
perceived, which is your 72
Yeah.
biomarker tests that's so key to your patient insight. Tell me about that.
Yeah. So we have my husband and I in the chiropractic profession have just made really great connections with people in the natural healthcare world since we started 20, 25 years ago. And we have always, well, not always, but maybe for the last 15 years of those, offered different functional lab work through our clinics. That lab work was restrained to the scope of labs that, as a chiropractor in our state, we were able to interpret and give recommendations on. And then, of
Mhm.
course, the recommendations were limited to what we as chiropractors, what was within our scope. And we did really well with that for a long time. It was better than what most people could find through their primary care provider. We don't operate under an insurance model, so that doesn't come into play for us, which gives us a
It's
lot
all
of
it's all cash pay?
all cash pay, yep.
Okay,
So it
typical.
gives the patient the ability to actually get labs done they want, not just what would match up with their symptoms when they typically go into the medical doctor. There's this tiny little lab
Yeah.
subset that they'll run. And so we put together with our functional medicine team a panel of labs that we feel are incredibly robust, not looking into a whole bunch of markers, because now you'll find places online, it's like the race to the top. Who can do the most number of labs? Well, a lot of those labs aren't really that important or valuable. Not to say that they don't provide good data, but if there aren't action steps to be taken because of them, then more information can actually be detrimental. So we have a very specific panel that we like to run that gives us valuable information. But the real secret sauce isn't so much in which of those are we running, because I could hand that list to anyone and anyone could select those boxes when they're putting in their lab order. The
Mhm.
real differentiating factor for Well Infused and what we do for our clients that you can't find in a medical office and that you can't find in all of your different online programs where they'll send you a home lab kit is how we interpret those labs. So, in the traditional medical model, when you get your labs back, you look at the top of the report and it'll highlight the ones that fell out of that quote unquote normal range. Well, that
Okay.
normal range can be huge. And if you're at the very bottom of normal or the very top of normal, in the traditional medical model, they'll say everything looks good. Well, I can tell you the number of times people come into my clinic because it's multiple times every single day without exaggeration. And people say, yeah, my doctor ran my labs. They said everything looks normal, but I don't feel good. Well, that's because
Yeah.
not everyone belongs at a random spot in this giant
Yeah.
range of quote unquote normal.
Kinda like
There's an
getting a testosterone test, right?
Exactly. Vitamin
Mhm.
D, they'll tell you you're fine at 30. I will tell you you are in danger zone at 30. Like, there's just a very different approach and interpretation of those numbers. So when
Yeah,
my
that makes
clients come in, we are able to help find what others miss because we are experts in the interpretation, and we know that if something's in the high normal range and this other markers in the low normal range, ooh, those don't make sense together. So in our world, we get to be proactive and we get to take action steps to prevent a bigger problem or to answer the question, why do I feel terrible when my labs are normal? Rather than waiting until something actually becomes a critical factor and truly a place where medicine might actually have to step in to correct something. So we get to work with a subset of clients that are either incredibly proactive. They want to live as long as they can, but as healthy as they can. They want to feel good at any age, and we're all getting older. We don't allow the mindset that as you age, your health just declines. That's just not acceptable in our world. And so we
Uh,
get to work with this subset of clients that's really focused on living their best life. And a lot of times we end up with clients coming in because they feel like they have no other option. They're like, I've tried everything, might as well try this. And
uh-huh.
we can find some things that are really simple to correct that make all the difference for them that just become completely overlooked based on traditional medical interpretation of numbers.
Yeah. Okay. And of all the services that you offer, functional medicine, the vitamin shots, the ozone therapy, the
Mhm.
IV therapy, the hormone, peptide, weight loss, breast thermography, salt room, regenerative therapy, all those,
Yeah.
which one is the most popular?
Well, great question. Most clients start with the functional labs because that's what allows us to get the data we need to make their
The
care
72
recommendations.
biomarker test.
Right. Yep, exactly. So I wouldn't necessarily it's the most popular, it's, like, not an experience. I mean, it's a simple blood draw, but without that data, we can't make proper recommendations. So we also operate a little differently than maybe when you walk into an IV lounge and you order an IV off a menu, right? That's great and
Mm.
could give you some benefit, but
So you're
everything we
saying
do is more.
that, I'm sorry to interrupt. You're saying that it's client specific based on the outcome of that blood panel.
There you go. So now we can customize their IV. Now we know, are you a candidate for ozone IV therapy? Nobody comes in and just says, "Oh, I think I'd like to try that." That's not really how that works. And we have to have a clinical indication for that. We need to make sure that there are no contraindications for that. And then we
I
need to
see.
tell you what protocol is appropriate. So we operate very like provider recommendation forward, not come in and pick a popular item and let's see how you feel afterwards and maybe you'll schedule again. So
Okay.
it's much more outcomes based rather than a single service based. It's a healthcare transformation experience rather than a one time, let me see if these vitamins give me more energy. Does that make
Well, you
sense?
got me excited. I want to take the test. I want to get in there.
We hear that a lot. That's the goal, but the real benefit though is like the client stories. Like when they're like, "Oh my gosh, I thought I'd tried everything," or I was gonna have surgery because nobody could figure out what was wrong with me. And they come in and they're like, "Oh my gosh, my life is different. I'm back to work. I enjoy my work again. I can actually be active. I'm back in the gym because I'm not in so much pain." And so those are the fun things that we like to see. So much so that some of our own practice members have asked, okay, well, what would it be like if I wanted to open up one of these clinics? Because I want more people to experience what I've experienced being taken care of from this holistic healthcare standpoint.
That's how the franchise model comes into play.
In
They
some
have the
cases,
experience.
most of the people that are like in our pipeline right now for the franchise are providers. They're medical doctors who don't want to work in primary care anymore or want out of the emergency room. They're nurse practitioners who have an entrepreneurial spirit that want to own their own clinic, but also want to practice the way they believe. There's a lot of nurse practitioners out there who have to give recommendations to a patient, but would go home and take care of their family very differently than the advice they're required to give in the medical setting. And so there's a lot of medical providers who are very excited about an opportunity to be awarded a franchise location and operate the way they believe, but have the support of the business model. Because most healthcare providers don't have business training. They don't know how to start a business or what's
Yeah.
required of them,
Oh, yeah.
or they don't
Totally
wanna
true.
build the skill set that's required to be both provider and business owner, and so the franchise model provides them the support and the structure for that.
Okay, that's incredible. I want to get to goal setting a little bit.
Mm.
Tell me, what is the biggest goal for the business for Well Infused in 2026 for this year?
For this
Low
year,
hanging fruit.
I would say opening 5 additional locations this year. We have a lot of people, in the lead pipeline for a franchise. We're particular. We say we don't sell franchises, we award them. We wanna make sure that the people who are gonna be owning and operating these clinics have a similar mindset to us and that they understand we're on the same team. We're gonna be business partners in this.
Yeah.
But we have several of them right now that are absolutely key candidates. And some of them have already secured their lease location. Some of them are beginning in architecture to get their space planning done. And so I expect that we'll open 5 more locations within 2026.
Oh, wow. Okay, fantastic. That is huge. Okay, so that's
Yeah.
the goal then. Okay, great. Okay, so, following with the frame, I kinda wanna go into kind of where growth and systems and kind of
Mhm.
focus where the strain and the chaos, like, shows up. When you look at your current, patient acquisition process, what is the
Mhm.
first point of friction or strain that your team, based on the location that you're at, obviously,
Mhm.
feels every single day?
As far as new client acquisition, I think probably bandwidth on the phone answering clients' questions. A lot of clients have been burned in previous experiences or are not savvy in the holistic healthcare model to really know, okay, well, what's the difference between the lab panel that you're running and the lab panel that my medical doctor would run? Or how do you interpret things differently? And so
Okay.
I wouldn't even say it's so much a bottleneck as we just have provided a robust amount of training for our teams, whether you're at the front desk answering the phones, whether you're behind the scenes
Yeah.
managing our CRM, whether you are the provider who actually ends up on the phone providing information to a client who's making a decision on whether or not they want to come into the clinic. So, I think new client acquisition no matter what industry you're in is tough because people are making decisions with their dollars and resources are finite for all of us, like there's only so much. And so you're oftentimes competing against what are they advertising online or what low price and high number of labs could you order and have a kit sent to your home, but then
Yep.
be left with no data and no answers. And so we like
Yeah.
people to know that our goal is to help you find answers and solutions, not just get data that leaves you with additional questions and nowhere to turn to get more answers.
And I'm really glad that you brought that point up, Stacy, because you really kind of zoned in on the telemedicine, right? Where
Mhm.
there's a ton of different providers out there,
Yep.
not even just the big brands, but also some of the little guys as well. And they obviously, it's just like you said, there's not really a lot of data, but you do a quick Zoom consult or something like
Yeah.
that, and then they say, okay, snap your fingers, diagnose, and then they send
Yeah.
you out the medication, right?
Right, and there's a problem with that too
Mhm.
because we also, as functional healthcare providers, our goal is not just to treat symptoms with vitamins, right? We're not just trying to swap medications for vitamins and hope that that works better. This is really meant to be a guided experience. What do you need to do for your nutrition? What do you need to do for your sleep? Are you exercising? And yes, supplements. We use supplements and we get great results. That's why we do labs before and after. We know what kind of results we get. But so many places that offer the telemedicine or the virtual consults, they don't have a service application. Like they have no way to actually provide a service for a client. If these people aren't absorbing their vitamins, I don't care how many you give them, they're not going to get results. Maybe they need to be coming in and doing vitamin injections for a short period of time. Ozone therapy, unbelievable when it comes to autoimmune conditions, chronic inflammation, general pain, brain fog. I mean, we have people who come in and use it weekly because they say I'm at the top of my game when I'm doing a podcast, when I am leading a CEO executive meeting, whatever it might be. We want people to live their purpose to the best possible extent, and you can't do that if you're not healthy. And so while online is great for data, you don't have somebody saying, okay, well, here's the service you need, and here are the providers who can actually offer that service to you and monitor your progress. Or you don't have someone to say, listen, if you're not really doing well with these supplements, like how do we tweak things? What do we need to modify? And nobody dives in on a one on one standpoint when it comes to those big, lab corporations in the sky. They've got an
Mhm.
AI report that goes to you, and there's a lot to be said for the benefits of utilizing AI, but it still doesn't have that personal touch. And I'm a chiropractor. I literally touch my patients on a daily basis, and there's nothing that you can do from a telemed or a virtual standpoint that can replace people
It's
just
an
need people.
energy transference, right, Stacy?
There's no question. Yeah.
That's great. Well, thanks for answering that question in such exquisite detail. I really appreciate it. Following up on that, how do you ensure that every single lead from initial inquiry to booked consult is followed up on consistently? And what percentage of the leads do you feel is slipping through the cracks? So now we're talking kind of more
Mm.
about systems,
Mhm.
right? And making sure that everybody, like, for example, after you close, right? The
Mhm.
phones are nobody's answering the phone after 6 p.m. What if
Mhm.
somebody calls in and they're
Oh,
interested?
I think that's easy for us. Have a great CRM. When our phones are off at the end of the day, there's an automatic text message that goes out if we missed a call. There is
Okay.
somebody on the back end who's always monitoring those leads and moving them up the sales ladder. So if they just,
Okay.
messaged us for 10% off their first service, but they don't even know what services we offer, we nurture them through that sequence. And so,
Okay.
what is your biggest health goal and what are you trying to accomplish? What have you tried so far? And so we have a very well-oiled team in the background that knows how to answer those questions, how to move them through the sequence, and then just keep them engaged until the point that we're able to actually see them face to face in the office, and then I know that our provider team has it from there.
Great answer. Thank you so much. What do you think the biggest challenge for franchise owners of Well Infused is?
Trying to follow the system and not recreate your own system. We have systems that are proven to work for a reason, and I'm an entrepreneur. Totally get it. But when you have an entrepreneurial spirit come in and own a franchise and then want to try things their own way because they think they know better, I haven't seen that successful yet. And so
Um,
franchisees, when they come in, it's a mutually beneficial relationship, but you have to be a good partner in the system. Follow the system. And if the system isn't working for you, then communicate. Don't just go off the rails and try to create your own system out on your own. When you're in a franchise, we say that you're in a franchise, you're in business for yourself, but not by yourself. Your success is our success. If you're not winning, we're not winning. And so it's really being able to trust the process, to communicate efficiently when something is working well so we can do more of it, and to communicate constructively when things aren't going well so that we can fix little glitches in the system or nuances that might be different from location to location.
okay. All right. Do you have nurses also at your locations? You do, like,
Yeah,
and
so
PAs?
every location has a nurse practitioner on site. We don't do anything. I mean, well, we do offer virtual visits to established clients. Most of our work is in person. So we have nurse practitioners on site and then registered nurses on site. Depending
Okay.
how busy a location is, they may have a phlebotomist just to help with lab draws, and then an office manager as well as a behind the scenes team from the franchise standpoint to help with all the lead management and all the communication that happens before a client actually establishes care for the first time.
Okay, good. Well, I'm glad that you clarified that for me. So here's a big one for you. If you could instantly eliminate one time sink or repetitive task that distracts your most highly paid staff, like
Mhm,
nurses or PAs or even yourself, from
mhm.
delivering patient care, what would it be?
My goodness, we have systematized and automated so much. Not one specific thing is coming to mind.
You
Um,
mentioned something earlier that I thought you
okay,
might answer it with, and it
yeah.
was being tied up on the phone.
Well, sure, when we're on the phone. But I would say that that isn't so much anything that could be automated because there's a lot of automations that happen before they actually get on the phone with us. And by the time they're
Mhm.
on the phone with us, it's for personal questions that AI or an automation really couldn't handle.
Yeah.
We use, like, outgoing voicemails when we have a new service category, which actually we're launching next week. We have outgoing voicemails. We have text message autoresponders. We have ease of scheduling when it comes to online. So, I would say it's probably having enough people virtually to get on the phone and answer those individual and personal questions that people really need to get the confidence to book an appointment for the first time.
Okay, okay. Alright, yeah, that's a great answer. Thank you so much for answering that.
Yeah.
What systems do you have in place that could turn a first-time consult into a patient that's just
Mhm.
coming into Well Infused for the first time and into a long-term high-value patient that returns for multiple treatments throughout the year?
Yeah. Great
Like, is it
question.
do you have a membership system, like membership badges?
So when a client comes in to go over their labs, before they come in, they get an interpretation report and the lab sent to them. So they're able to watch a video and learn more about the interpretation report before they come in and sit down with the nurse practitioner to go over the recommendations. When they go over those recommendations with the nurse practitioner, they're going to fall into one of three categories. Are you someone who is just here for the data, which is a very, very small percent of our clients? Or are you somebody who wants to actually find solutions to the problems that brought you in the first place? And so the nurse practitioner, and sometimes with the support of an office manager, would just go over the recommendations for membership for them. So I would say 60% of the clients that we see on a daily basis have some sort of package with us or have some sort of membership with us. It's, I think, less than 30% that are service by service clients.
Okay. Alright, very good then. When a consult is booked, how do you ensure that that patient is fully qualified and ready to move forward rather than just being a tire kicker, right? A window shopper, taking up valuable calendar space.
They're paid appointments.
There we go, and I'm sure that you have a cancellation policy as well in effect, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah. You're not scheduling an appointment unless you're paying a deposit or you have a credit card on file. I've
So
learned
they're
that
showing up no matter what.
back in my chiropractic years, like, you don't book free appointments, or you're gonna be frustrated with your time filled with people who
Okay.
don't show. So
I
we
really
just don't.
hope some other med spa owners are gonna take note of that and hopefully implement that in their practice. That's
If they're
good.
not already, that would be step number 1. Otherwise, yeah, you're booking up a lot of free time for yourself. Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, good. Value your time, right? Okay.
Very
How do you
limited commodity, that's for sure.
Yeah, yeah. How do you approach, training and retention for your aesthetic providers, especially when it comes
Mhm.
to balancing their clinical experience with the need for sales and conversion skills?
Yeah, so we have a weekly training, weekly team meeting. We talk about sales, we talk about marketing. What is the difference between those 2? Everyone, no matter what their role is, nurse practitioner, RN, office manager, behind the scenes, everyone is in sales, and that is a very good thing because we have a product that people need, and if we're not selling that product to people who need it, then their life and their health will not be in as good of shape. And so we make sure that we work on the mindset of sales with every employee. And we make sure that the training is there on a week to week basis. You know, what's working, what's not working, what new ads are we running, and what is our real goal with this? Yes, we want people under memberships, but because they get better. So, how do we ask the right questions that give people the confidence to walk into our clinic versus all the other options that they might have out there?
Wow, that's awesome. That's incredible. Sounds like a really great program. You're getting me excited about it.
Yeah. We also use a lot of automations for training. So
Mhm.
any training that we're doing on a weekly basis is put into their back office. They can rewatch that training. They're given it in handout format so they know what ads are, what questions to ask on the calls if people call in asking questions, what is the next step in the sales ladder. We don't need to go from, I'm just curious about hormones to selling them, a $25,000 stem cell package. Now we have people who do that, but we also know the natural order of things, and we do what the client needs next, not the top of the ladder for every client wondering if they're gonna fail somewhere in between.
What is your philosophy on delegating the core business functions like lead generation or appointment management versus keeping them in-house? Do you outsource
Delegate,
that? You
delegate.
delegate. Okay, so you do
Delegate,
outsource.
delegate. And we bring
Right.
people in-house, like, for the franchise behind the scenes, like, we bring people in-house who know our business very, very well. Typically, well, I can't think of anyone who hasn't benefited from the services that we offer. So they have a personal story to tell. But I think, I'm teaching a class for nurse practitioners coming up in a few weeks. And one of the biggest hurdles that I was told about, which would be helpful to teach on, was simply the fact that so many providers out there are trying to wear too many hats, that they're trying to do it all. And they get to this point where their practices stall, or maybe they even go backwards because they're trying to work on the business and work in the business and that they're getting burnout. And so it is really important that you realize you cannot do it all, that you train the right team members, you delegate out those tasks that is not your highest level operator task so that somebody else can do what they do really well in support of the business overall.
Stacey, I was just gonna say that exact same thing. That's amazing. You can't be everything to everyone, right? You
Mhm.
gotta stay within your wheelhouse, right? And if it's something is outside of your wheelhouse, you can, the training that you put them through, that's good. That's definitely needed, but you can't be all things to everybody. So,
Mhm.
definitely delegate the things that are huge time sink stuff that, is not outside of the business's
Yeah.
wheelhouse. That's good.
If you find yourself answering the same question over and over, it's because you haven't trained on it well enough. So create a training around those things that keep coming up as glitches or problems or questions. Systematizing everything is the only way you're going to go from maybe a small operator to a large company. There's a very different set of systems that have to be created to go from a single clinic to multiple. That's growth. And then there's a very different set of systems that have to be created to go from maybe a handful of clinics to scale, which is the process that we're going through right now when it comes to, the goal of 100 clinics in 10 years is not a small goal. It will only happen if proper systems are in place.
Yeah, absolutely. Great answers. Thank you so much. What do you, I want to go to client experience. What do you think? Okay. Yeah. Now I'm sure that you use social media to advertise. and stuff like that to get them into the clinic, right? So, what do you think the biggest challenge is that's translating that excitement that a patient feels from seeing an ad or a social media post into a
Mhm.
seamless, high touch experience, one that they actually reach out to book that appointment with the clinic and put down that deposit?
Yeah, well, I think systematizing that too, like most of that's automated. Like once they've had a conversation with us, they either schedule on the phone and that's handled by whoever is speaking with them. Or if they've done enough research or seen us on social enough that they have trust in us without that phone call, they can very easily just do that online. A push of a couple of buttons, their appointment is booked, their deposit is paid. They still get a follow up from us saying, "Hey, so excited to see that you booked your appointment. We're excited that you'll be coming in." You'll have an email with an intake, a link to your intake form. The more data we have about you when you arrive, the better we'll be able to take care of you when you're here. And so multiple touch points from that standpoint. Our company has an app. They can go on the app, fill out their forms, reschedule their appointments. We make everything as seamless and user friendly as we possibly can. And then for those clients who don't like tech, somebody ready and available when they walk in for that first appointment if their paperwork isn't done, to sit down and just help them with it, and to let them know that the nurses are incredibly well trained, that their service appointment is going to go seamlessly, and then make sure that we have the confidence to know what their follow-up should be. You can't let clients guide their care when it's supposed to be a provider telling them what to do. They're there for your advice, so tell them what they need. And so they know when, my clients know or my employees know that when a client checks out, it automatically means their next appointment is being scheduled. So nobody leaves without a next appointment. How do we make sure that even if they weren't ready to schedule another service, that next appointment is an outgoing call from one of our providers to check in? How did you do after that IV? Did you notice a difference? Were you feeling better? Were you feeling worse? Were you feeling the same? What does that mean? And how can we help you get to the next step of achieving whatever health goals you have in place?
Okay, cool. All right. Yeah, that's good. But beyond the treatment itself, what is the one part of the patient journey that you feel is most vulnerable to human error? Consistency.
Consistently taking nutritional supplements as advised. So we even have special cases we give them. We write on their bottles how many supplements per day. The goal isn't that they're going home and they're so overwhelmed by supplements that they just choose not to do anything, but keeping them consistent. Results don't happen overnight. And so reminding them that consistency is key. That's why if you're on a membership, you automatically have an appointment or a phone call every 30 days. We're checking in. How are you doing? Are you out of supplements? Do we need to ship you something? How are you doing? So the biggest barrier to them getting results is really them getting in their own way or not creating the habits that are necessary to see a health transformation.
Okay. And how do you measure the lifetime value of a patient? What's the most surprising factor that you found that contributes to long-term loyalty?
How do you um Well, obviously, there's a numerical way to track the value of a client, right?
Let's hear it.
Most of ours are between 8 and 10,000, and then we have our outliers that are at 40, 50,000.
Okay.
Um, those people are the ones that are typically utilizing regenerative therapy services most. Those are life-changing and
Which
life-altering, and so
ones? Like the ozone?
nope, stem cells,
Oh, stem cells. Okay, those are a higher cost is what you're alluding to.
yes.
Okay.
But
All right.
the frequency at which those clients will do those services on an annual basis is also very high. So we know those get results. It's just a different subset of client that will take advantage of those opportunities. But also how many people they refer. That's a great way to figure out the value of a client. We have a client that's never been in for more than 2 services, but referred us 10 new clients last month. That's a
Okay.
very valuable client, even though she doesn't live close enough to us to receive services on a regular basis. So there's a lot of ways to really look at that. And then when it comes to the success of the client, thankfully we've got data for that too. Like when we redo their labs and we can see what changes are happening, we know that they're successful. They're on fewer medications. They're canceling surgeries. They feel like themselves again. They're back to the activities they enjoy. And that's what we really want. At the end of the day, that's why our clinics exist, is so people can live a healthier and happier life.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great. So what do you think the biggest drop off that occurs between the initial consult and the booking of the procedure? Or is there any at all?
None. We don't have a drop off there. That's not a drop
It's
off point
amazing.
for us.
And I
Yeah.
think that probably has to do with the policies that you implemented of putting down a deposit, right? And making sure that they're committed because once they're committed and they've done that, they're going to be there, right? And
And
they're Yeah.
The commitment, yes, and then first experience. When they walk in and we know who they are, we know their name, we're ready for them, their service is prepped, and then that service procedure goes smoothly, like, there's no question that they're gonna be coming back.
Now you also do GLP-1s and weight loss.
Mhm.
Do you is that pretty big for that part of the practice? Because you do so many other things.
Yeah, it's
Is it
like
a
8 or
small subset?
9%, 8 or
How
9%.
15? Oh, is that really? Okay, wow.
Mhm,
Pretty small, right?
mhm.
So you don't really have a lot of people like busting down the door for weight loss, right? People are going there for other things.
No, and the reason is because if they're just there for the weight loss piece, up until this point, who knows if that changes soon, but up until this point, you can get that online.
Yeah,
I mean, you can do a virtual appointment. That is not
yeah,
our ideal client. Some of our ideal clients would do well with GLP-1s, no question about it, but we monitor. For people who just wanna take the shot and not change their lifestyle factors or not pay attention to how much muscle versus fat they're losing, those aren't our ideal clients. We're not in it for the weight drop, we're in it for the health improvement. And so we
yeah.
use InBody to measure those changes. We monitor those labs. We won't give anyone a GLP-1 until we've gotten their labs drawn and make sure that it is the right thing for them. The number of times we've caught diabetic issues that were unmonitored, the number of times that people's I'm trying to think what else. Platelet counts were super I mean, we find some crazy stuff that the online teams don't even look for to know that that's an ideal client or not. And their definition of an ideal client is different than mine. So ours are gonna be on a membership, they're gonna be monitored, we're gonna take away their GLP-1s if they're losing muscle mass and not eating properly, because we're not in it for the dollar, we're in it for the outcome, and we're in it for
That's
the right
amazing.
outcomes.
And what a fantastic philosophy. Thanks so much for sharing that, Stacy. Gosh, I know there's so many more questions that I want to answer that I want to ask you about, but we're running low on time, unfortunately. If you looked at the business today, right now,
Mhm,
what's the single heaviest anchor? I know you're heading for the stratosphere right now with 10 new locations. That is going to be the goal
mhm.
for opening up this year. Well, what's the single heaviest anchor that's dragging that process down? You're really gonna have to look inward to try to answer this question.
Well,
Broken system that if fixed would solve half the other problems.
yeah. So right now, like we have looked inward and we know the answer to that question. It's not so much that we have any systems that are broken, but that they're growing so quickly, it's finding the right key people to put in the right places to keep the systems operational. And so that's something right now that we are working on pretty diligently just to make sure that we're keeping almost like on the bench these key people who, as the system grows and scales, will step in and then niche into the right positions for them. We have a lot of key players who are absolute A players, but they're even doing more jobs than what they should right now because we're kind of between growth and scale where we need to bring on additional employees. And then making sure that we're putting employees in positions of their strength, not trying to teach them how to be better at the weaknesses, but truly hire somebody correct for those positions.
Playing to their strengths, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, and scaling, it sounds like scaling was the answer to that.
Well, the right people so that as growth and scale happens, there's not a glitch in the system. So no
Uh,
broken systems, just systems that are like full steam ahead that we need to make sure we continue to have the manpower to serve.
okay. All right, great. Great answer. Great answers. And fantastic. And that's such a fantastic breakdown. So the website is wellinfused.com. Please check the link in the description for where you can find the nearest location and the nearest franchise. We're just about out of time, Stacy, and I want to thank
Yep,
you for being so candid about the operational reality. We
sure.
have covered a ton of ground today, from your origin story to the future of aesthetic medicine, and I know that our audience is going to get immense value from this. And
Hope
with that,
so.
we're going to go ahead and wrap up the recorded portion of the Growth Lab.